So you're trying to log into your Cisco iOS router and you forgot your password. How do you recover it? Stick around to learn how.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to more of the Cisco CCT. In this episode, we're going to be looking at password recovery with a Cisco iOS router. Ronnie, what are some of the main goals for this episode?
The main goal for this episode is relatively simple, but it is a very common task that has to be done, which is how do we actually go ahead and essentially bypass a password that is on that router so that we can get back into it. So that's what we want to do, is show you kind of the technique to be able to do that. Now, there's a couple of different techniques behind it, but we're going to use one of them that I know absolutely works all the time. So we're going to do that. Now, Wes, before we actually talk about that, let's set up why in the world this would actually end up happening, okay? So sometimes, Wes, when you end up buying, let's say, used equipment from eBay, you might get that piece of equipment and they didn't do anything but just verify that it turned on and they could get to something. And all of a sudden, there it is. You're pressing enter a couple of times and you see username. And you look in the box, and Wes, there's not anything written down that says what the username or the password is.
And we don't use anything like keychain or any kind of password manager in here, do we?
Yeah, well, even if we did, it wouldn't be for that company.
I guess it wouldn't matter, yeah. So we got residual configurations behind that don't match what we need, and we can't get into the device.
Right. The other thing that can, of course, happen is, let's say that you end up retiring a device, and when you do that, it might be, let's say, weeks later or even months later, and then you realize, hey, we're upgrading, but we still need this piece of equipment back in for at least temporarily. And now, Wes, you've forgotten what the password is. Okay? So those are real situations that end up happening. And so there is a way that you can actually get around this if you actually learn what the technique is. So Wes, let's take a look at that situation here. So show us what you have.
Okay, so far I'm consoled in. So we're connected to the router, and if I hit enter a couple times, there it is, Ronnie. Looks like we got a username here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in Ronnie and a favorite password of, Cisco123. This has been the password that we've set on the device.
Pretty much.
And, login is invalid. So apparently I'm going to try one more. I'm going to try my username, and I'm going to try Cisco123. And we'll let that kick off there, and it looks like we don't have a valid password.
Try admin and Cisco.
All right.
Let's try that and see what happens here.
admin.
Sometimes people set default passwords and fairly easy ones, right?
All right.
And
so
not even think about it.
It is going to stop me from a brute force attack. It said, nope, that's not right, and it kicked me back out, so now I'm connected again.
Yeah, so these are realistic scenarios, okay? So in that sense, Wes, we've got the scenario exactly like what I mentioned here. Regardless of which way you ended up getting that router, if you need to put it back in play, Wes, you can't configure it. You can't get access to it.
Okay.
This is as far as you're going to get.
Okay, so if we're going to start this process, where do we get started to get back into this thing?
All right, so there's a couple of methods that actually are used here. And I have to say this because this is always what's happening on older particular devices. What you normally actually end up doing is you would have a keyboard that will have the break key on it. And if you powered that device down and then you turned it back on, there would come a point where you'd see normally in the first 30 seconds of the boot of that device, you can hit that pause break key if you're on a Windows keyboard a lot of times, or even on another type of keyboard, you might be able to do like a control break is what you could do. And that would allow you to get in, and that would actually boot it into Raman. From that point, you could set the configuration register and you'd be up and going, okay?
Ronnie, I have a problem here. I'm looking at this Mac keyboard, and I don't see a break key anywhere, so I'm going to assume that I can't use option number 1.
Yeah, that's not a great one for us, okay? Now, they do have, you can actually look this up. There are supposed to be like equivalent keys that you can actually use on the Mac trying to do something like this. Okay, now, Wes, on this one, this is a 3925. It's not the newest router that's out there, but it's actually a fairly decent router, at least for what we're doing. But Wes, I tried all those combinations before we even got on screen, and I could not get them to work in whatever combination. So that was true with this. And Wes, you even gave me a keyboard to try as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So I even plugged in the keyboard, tried to make that one happen, and I just could not catch it exactly where that device wanted me to go. So there comes that point when it doesn't work. So what do you do then? Well, the other method that's just as valid, even though most people go, you don't ever need to use that other one. Don't get me wrong. I think that may be true, especially when the hardware is a little bit older. But on these newer ones, they boot so quickly, Wes, by comparison, that you may have to do the method that I like using now, which is removing the compact flash. Now, you'll do that on a router, but on most switches, you won't have compact flash, so just be aware of that one instead. The great thing is, Wes, we're going to do exactly that particular procedure. Is we're going to remove the compact flash.
Okay.
And we're going to reboot the router, and that should get us into ROM-MON mode, and then we can configure the config register to get us into that. That will actually allow us to change that. Ready to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do we get started? We know you got to, is this going to be a powered off thing?
Yep.
Okay.
So the first thing we need to do is we need to power it off, and then we're going to remove this compact flash, okay? So it's going to require both of Wes and I do it. So Wes, go ahead and power it down.
Okay.
All right. So while Wes is powering this thing down, it actually sounds so much quieter in this room, doesn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. Then, the reason why this router is so much bigger than the one that we were using is that I now have to reach over and actually remove the compact flash from this side. So I'm going to eject. I'm going to eject the compact flash, so it's actually right here.
Okay.
So let me see if I can turn that thing around. So there it is. It's the official Cisco compact flash. Now, Wes, I don't know if that actually means anything, except that it's probably $1,000 more expensive than anything else that we'd have. But now that we've got that removed, let's go ahead and power the router back on, and we'll bring the terminal back up, and you'll see how quickly this actually happens here. All right, so once Wes powers it on, what we're seeing is it starts to boot up right away, and it tells us, hey, it's actually taking a look at the ROM-MON being initialized. It reads it, and then it says compact flash is not present. It actually goes through this a couple of times, if not 3 times, I believe, before anything happens. So you see where it's actually repeating. It's like, I'm not finding what I should boot up into. Well, this is the point where we talked about it in our earlier episodes. We talked about the startup process, right?
Yep.
It goes, I can't find an iOS. What do? I go ahead and I drop into ROM-MON mode.
Okay.
So now with the ROM-MON mode, notice it says ROM-MON 1, which is starting to enumerate every single line here. Let's go ahead and hit a question mark here. And you'll see that it looks like we have context-sensitive help. Okay. Now, Wes, that may be true, but in ROM-MON mode, that's pretty much as deep as it goes. Okay. It doesn't actually allow you to continue to actually do a lot. So the one that we're looking for is the one that says confreg. So C-O-N-F.
So this one right here. Okay.
Yep, that is the one that we're looking at. Go ahead and type that in. Yep. And now, if you hit a question mark, press enter, you'll notice it just says, hey, that's an illegal argument. Notice it's not telling you, like, here's what the next option should be.
So it's help.
Yeah. Now, try and hit an up arrow, because we might be able to, oh, look at that.
No, that's not working.
Yeah. So you really have the help that you have. Here's a list of commands you can use.
Okay.
The rest of this you just got to know.
Okay.
So let's type in CONFREG again. And then we're going to type in 0x2142.
All right. So I got 0x2142.
Yeah. Verify that that's actually a 0 and not an O. Is that correct?
Okay, will do. Yep, yeah. We'll do it one more time.
I can't, it's a little bit far from I'm starting to squint here, so that's
that's okay. Yeah, it is.
Right, so
sure.
If it's an O, it's going to kind of dump it out again, saying it's illegal because it doesn't recognize what that character is for this position. But remember, in earlier episodes, we talked about this process as well, where you have to change this register to help it, okay? So once we do that, go ahead and press enter.
Okay.
And then, you'll actually have to type it in again. It says somewhere along the line it didn't like the way you typed it in.
Let me re-hit that, make sure what I did here. Confreg. Okay, so I'm going to try that again. Reg space
0x
0x2142.
Right.
And hit enter.
Enter.
And there we go.
Yep. So now notice it gives us 2 options. Now if we hit reset right now, it's just going to reboot.
Okay.
The problem that we have is if it reboots, it's going to come right back to ROM-MON because the compact flash isn't there.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we want to turn the device off, and we're going to insert the compact flash back in.
All right.
So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, sure. I have to say too, Ronnie, one of the things I like about this one versus the one that we've been using in the past is this actually has a power button on it.
Right. Yeah.
And are we good?
Yep, we're good. So we're going to turn it back on. We're going to go back into our terminal this time, and we'll see the difference right away. Okay. So now when it actually starts to boot back up, we've now got the iOS back in the compact flash, And so it shouldn't actually give us an error that the compact flash is missing from this device.
Okay.
So Wes, I like this particular procedure because it's not dependent on me timing it
Okay.
to ensure that I do this with a keyboard.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, you should learn the keyboard method. That's the one that's tried and true that everybody loves, and they'll tell you that only amateurs like Ronnie Wong would actually do this. No, I'm joking too. It's two different methods, and there's, they say both of them are valid.
Okay.
But overall, though, just kind of realize that whichever one you choose is perfectly fine. So it's just having to actually boot up here for a point, and now notice it says looking for the iOS. Without the compact flash, we can't even get to this test stage here.
Okay.
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 So now it's actually loading up the iOS itself. So it's going to do it here, right?
All right, there it is.
So this particular process that's going on, right? This is expanding it into RAM.
All right.
And what we're doing with that 2142 is that it's saying, hey, load up the iOS, but don't load up the startup config.
Okay, that would have been 2102 if it were the normal.
Right, the normal boot process
okay,
is
gotcha.
load up the iOS and then load up the startup config,
Sure.
and then we're actually ready to go.
Okay.
But 2142 says load up the iOS, don't load up the startup config, is what we're actually seeing.
Okay, so we see the initial configuration here.
Yep.
I'm thinking we're going to type no.
We're going to type no here.
Okay. So let me go ahead and do that.
So remember, this is acting like it's a factory reset router is what it's
Okay.
acting like. Yep. Go ahead and press that.
And I press
And,
enter.
Yep. And we'll just wait in just a second here. And so it should actually be coming up.
And there we go. Okay.
And notice we're in now. So
Sure.
before we had username, right? We
Yep.
couldn't do anything but that. But now we're actually in.
Okay.
So what do we do in terms of password recovery? Well, technically, Wes, we're not really recovering what the password is.
Okay.
We're simply going to remove it or replace it is
All
what
right.
we're going to do.
Okay.
So let's get to that method. Let's go ahead and get into privilege mode at this point.
Okay.
And now for us to be able to do that, we have to overwrite what's in startup config. Okay. But the way that we do that is we copy it into our running config first. So type in copy
Okay.
and then startup dash config.
I
You
just
have to
wanted...
type in startup. Yeah.
Oh, startup.
Yeah.
Oh,
startup
yes. Startup.
dash config. And then you can do,
There we go.
there you go. Yep. And then
And-
space running
Running.
and then dash config.
All right. And hit enter.
Yep. Hit enter.
Okay. And then confirm.
Right. Confirm it.
Okay.
And now notice the difference in the prompt.
Oh, sure enough.
Okay. So let's go ahead and type in a show running dash config.
Okay. Oh, there's no A in
Yep.
show. just in case you didn't know out there.
Right.
All right, there we go.
And now as we go back through, we'll actually see something. Notice the enable secret there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So that's definitely something we'll have to change or we'll have to remove.
Okay.
So it's actually, I went ahead and encrypted it on this one. So let's
Okay.
go ahead and press the space bar again.
Okay.
Gotta remember that. And now you see, hey, look at that. There's a username there.
Oh, there
as well.
is.
Okay. Now, it may be that we don't want to remove that username.
Okay.
But for us to be able to get back in, we have to at least give it something that we can log in with.
Okay.
So Wes, as far as we know, oh, look, there's an IP address on it as well.
Okay.
But I notice it's also in shutdown mode at this point, so
Okay.
we're not going to worry about that. So let's go ahead and you can do a Control-C out of this if you want to.
There we go. Done.
Now, at this point, what we want to do is go into our global configuration mode.
Okay.
Now, let's go ahead and type in no enable
Okay.
secret, space secret.
All right.
Now, that went ahead and accepted it. Now, the thing is, that could be okay, but it might not have been. Okay.
All right.
So normally, if you actually do something like this, make sure you write down whatever secret you create. Okay.
Okay.
In other words, it's just a password, but by using the word secret, it says I'm going to automatically encrypt it. That's all it's doing. Okay.
Gotcha.
So now let's go ahead and type in enable secret, and we'll just do Cisco 123. Oops.
Okay.
Yep. Cisco 123.
All right.
All right. Press enter.
Okay.
And now let's go ahead and create another username and password. So we're not going to get rid of the that account that's on it.
Okay.
Somebody may still use it,
Okay.
but let's go ahead and add in yours. So let's
Okay.
do a username, and then Wes,
Okay.
and then do a space password, and then do whatever password you want to,
All right.
as long as you can remember it.
Okay.
All right, there you go. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Now let's go ahead and save this as well. So type in exit.
Okay.
Yep, and then from here, let's type in copy and then running dash config space startup dash config.
Okay.
Yep, press enter, and go ahead
confirm.
and confirm it.
All right.
All right, now, before we do anything else, right?
Okay.
Everything should be set up to where we can do that. But if I reboot it right now, the problem is the idea of the configuration register. So let's do a show version here.
Okay.
Now, go ahead and hit your tab, or not tab, your space bar all the way down to the bottom. I would say tab, but.
Okay, no problem. There it is.
All right, so notice the configuration register. We're still in password recovery mode,
Okay.
which means next time it boot up, it's going to boot up exactly the same way we just did.
Okay.
So now we need to change that to go ahead and say, no, now that I've saved the startup config,
All right.
okay, I want to boot that up too. So let's go back into our global configuration mode.
Okay.
And then let's type in config dash register.
Okay.
And now 0x2102.
Okay. And hit enter.
Hit enter. And that actually puts us back in. Now
Okay.
let's do this. Let's go ahead and type in exit. And let's do a copy run start again. Let's make sure we save everything that we want to.
Copy.
Run. And then space start. And that's just an abbreviation. Yep,
Okay.
press it. Yep. And now let's type in show version again to verify that this is actually changed. And you'll actually see that it gives us a little bit here. Notice what it says here, right? It says, hey, the configuration register currently is what? 2142.
Okay.
But at the next reboot,
It's going to be 2102.
right. So that's what we wanted to confirm. All right.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and type in reload. And, yep, proceed.
All
And
right.
we'll find out here in just a moment once it actually reboots. So,
Okay.
Wes, the process itself isn't difficult, right?
Sure.
It seems to be fairly easy.
It does. One thing that I'll notice right away, and I know this is probably obvious to most of you, is to do this, you do need physical access to the
Right.
device. This isn't something that's done over the network.
No, if you do it over the network, don't get me wrong, you might be able to try to do it over the network.
Sure. Secret shouldn't be on the network.
Yeah, but at the same time, right, if you do it over the network, you can run into issues, and if you run into an issue and you're trying to do this and you're in a different location, it doesn't work.
Time to drive down to the
Yeah,
station.
it's
and
time to drive down and do it.
Gotcha.
So I think that this is probably something that's
Sure, that
better
makes sense.
that you're done when you actually are console cabled in.
Okay,
To
perfect.
do it. So just realize when you do something like that. Now, when you make changes like what we did with the startup config,
Mm-hmm.
the idea is to make the minimal changes that you need to
Okay.
in case there are, it'd be easy for me if I'm not paying attention, right, to just start reconfiguring the device when I first get in at the initial 2142 and just start reconfiguring the thing and then realize, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that.
Okay, sure.
So instead, bring that startup back in, only change what you need to be able to get access back into the device.
I make that mistake sometimes too, where something will be broke, and maybe you've done this out here, where you'll change 5 things, something fixed it, but I have to say something fixed it because I changed so many things and didn't document what I'm doing. I'm not exactly sure what the fix was.
Right. Yeah, so how are we doing on the reboot? at this
We're
point?
almost there. It looks like it is going
nice.
through. It's bringing the interfaces online right now
Yep.
as we speak. So a couple more minutes, maybe.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be too long. Go ahead and hit enter a couple of times and let's see what happens here.
And we are there.
All right, so Wes, let's try out your username and password.
All right.
Did you type in Wes or W.
Oh,
Brian?
you're right. I did. I'm so used to the naming
Yeah,
conventions.
let's see. Yeah.
Let's try that again. Wes, and I like cheese. Because, yes, I like cheese, and I am in.
All right, so let's verify that we also changed the enable password as well.
Okay.
So type in enable.
And that was a Cisco 123.
Yep.
And it looks like we're in privilege mode.
All right, so we're actually in privilege mode now. Now that means we've gotten access back to this router so that we can begin to actually put it back in the stage that we need to
Okay.
for the network. Now, if you didn't actually need to do all this, Wes, the easiest way would have been to do a factory reset. But you actually can see we're going to do that later on in our particular series as we continue
All right,
on
that
here.
sounds fun.
But overall, though, Wes, that is the process of us actually having to do password recovery. And hopefully you found it actually to be useful and something you're probably going to find to be useful in your future with Cisco equipment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is recovery of a password on a Cisco iOS router. Now, that's all for this episode, but I will tell you, stick around because we got more to come in the Cisco CCT.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.